As global disasters and extreme weather events continue to mount across the planet, it is becoming imperative that all of us keep ourselves abreast with what is happening. We should do it for our own benefit as well as those that we care about. We are now living in unpredictable times. If you follow the news, you would know just how much things are changing every day, almost to the point where it would make your head spin. In order to slow down that pace, it's important to explain what's happening one event at a time. Similar to placing the pieces of a puzzle into one uniform picture that can be easily recognized and identified. One of the pieces of the puzzle that has stirred a great deal of attention has to do with the intensity of seismic and volcanic activity in the Northern Hemisphere, especially along the Cascadia subduction zone and most recently along the Aleutian Island chain in Alaska. One of the biggest volcanic news stories of this year concerns the vigorous and surprising eruption of the Bogoslav volcano in the Aleutian Islands. The volcano produced a large explosive eruption followed by a series of explosions on almost a daily basis. Some of these explosions have reached as high as 35,000 feet into the atmosphere. The highly explosive nature of these eruptions is likely rooted in the interaction between the new magma that is reaching the surface and the abundant seawater that it meets when it erupts. That water can quickly flash to steam and help fragment the magma into ash, thus adding to the explosivity of the eruption. This image shows how the continuous eruptions at Bogoslav have demolished much of its Aleutian Island home. Alaskan volcanoes have actually produced 1 or 2 eruptions per year since 1900. At least 20 catastrophic caldera-forming eruptions have occurred in the past 10,000 years. The awesome eruption of 1912 in the Katmai National Monument is the most recent. Alaska normally records 3,000 quakes monthly, but now seismologists have already reached the monthly average in just 10 days. This unusual sequence comprises, among others, 3 earthquakes larger than magnitude 6, 7 larger than magnitude 5, and 50 larger than magnitude 4. The highest number of quakes recorded statewide to date came in 2014, when more than 40,000 were detected, an astonishing number. Mount St. Helens is one of those volcanoes that is unsettled in 2017, resulting in an earthquake swarm. The USGS detected over 120 earthquakes over the last few days, all occurring 1 to 2 miles beneath the volcano. Here's a look back at the shocking devastation left in the wake of the Mount St. Helens eruption on May 18th of 1980. We often associate volcanic eruptions with the earthquakes that precede the eruption. But what do we know about megaquakes? The largest earthquake ever recorded by seismic instruments on this planet was a magnitude 9.5 earthquake in Chile on May 22nd of 1960. That earthquake occurred on a fault that is almost 1,000 miles long and 150 miles wide, dipping into the earth at a shallow angle. So we know that megaquakes have occurred in our past and are likely to happen again. In fact, earthquakes of various intensity are capable of striking any location at any time. But history shows they occur in the same general patterns over time, principally in 3 large zones of the Earth. One of those zones is referred to as the Circum-Pacific Seismic Belt, the world's greatest earthquake zone located along the rim of the Pacific Ocean, where 81% of the world's largest earthquakes occur. Another of those zones is referred to as the Alpide. It extends from Java to Sumatra, through the Himalayas, the Mediterranean, and then out into the Atlantic. This belt accounts for about 17% of the world's largest earthquakes, including some of the most destructive. The third prominent belt follows the submerged Mid-Atlantic Ridge. This would include the New Madrid fault line. The last significant earthquake to occur in this area was in 1811 and 1812, the most powerful earthquakes to hit the contiguous United States east of the Rocky Mountains in recorded history. In fact, the New Madrid earthquakes were so powerful that they were felt over nearly 1 million square miles. Not only did the quake reverse the flow of the Mississippi, but it damaged the sidewalks in Washington, D.C., and reportedly rang church bells in Boston. The New Madrid is the least understood seismic zone in the United States. It has often been said that another major earthquake in this zone represents a towering threat for which the central United States is almost entirely unprepared. I'm sure you've heard of the expression that if an earth-shattering catastrophe were to occur, that California would eventually fall off into the ocean. Well, that saying is a bit exaggerated, but California is moving horizontally north towards Alaska in a type of sliding motion. The dividing point is the San Andreas Fault System, which extends from the Salton Sea in the south to Cape Mendocino in the north. This 800-mile-long fault is the boundary between the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. The Pacific Plate is moving to the northwest with respect to the North American Plate at approximately 2 inches per year. Now, at that rate, it would take some 15 million years for Los Angeles and San Francisco to be next-door neighbors. Unless, of course, a major pole shift were to occur, in which case the timeline could rapidly change. One important result of earthquakes that should be considered is that the earthquakes itself do not kill people. It is the buildings and the contents therein that cause deaths in seismically active regions. There has been larger earthquakes that have sustained very little damage and smaller ones that have. It all depends on the manner and the construction of the buildings and the materials that are being used. Some buildings were never meant to withstand violent shaking. Much depends on two variables: geology and engineering. From place to place, there are great differences in the geology at and below the ground surface. Different kinds of geology will do different things in earthquakes. For example, shaking at a site with soft sediments can last 3 times as long as shaking at a stable bedrock site, such as one composed of granite. Local soil conditions also play a role, as certain soils greatly amplify the shaking in an earthquake. The looser and thicker the soil is, the greater the energy movement will be. Fires are another major risk during earthquakes, as gas lines may be damaged, which could dramatically change life in America overnight. Earthquakes are a powerful force that can change landscapes and lifestyles. But there is something even more distressing that earthquakes are capable of doing. Media sources have reported that the Chilean earthquake of 2010 and the Japanese quake of 2011 were so powerful that they caused a shift or tilt in the Earth's axis. The Earth, which spins like a top as it orbits the Sun, has its tilt permanently altered. If we evaluate the simple facts involved with these two earthquakes, then the probability of an axis tilt comes into focus. The earthquake that unleashed the devastating tsunami on March 11th of 2011 moved the entire main island of Japan by 8 feet. It also shifted the Earth on its axis by nearly 4 inches. Scientists who are familiar with the phenomena say that the axis being altered has led to the shortening of the day by 1.8 milliseconds. The law of physics implies that the axis of rotation doesn't change relative to other stars as a result of an earthquake. So if you were looking at the Earth from a distance, you would not notice a change in the Earth's orbit or rotation. However, because an earthquake moves the material around within the Earth itself, the position of the rotation axis changes. We call this the sloshing of the Earth's mantle, in which the crust actually shifts. So if it appears that a shift of the Earth's axis took place in 2011, it is because we use points of reference on the Earth's surface to determine if this has occurred, where the probable cause is more accurately described as a shifting of everything on the Earth's surface. Here then is a look at the devastating effects of a mega earthquake and tsunami that hit the island of Japan on March 11th of 2011. The events that alter the dynamics of our planet are a part of the puzzle that, when put into place, help contribute to the overall picture of a planet in turmoil. But there are other pieces of the puzzle that are not so easy to identify or to put into place. One of those pieces has to do with the unexplained wave anomaly that is originating from Antarctica. This activity is quite apparent if you examine the recent morphed integrated microwave imagery as shown here. In April, the same type of activity and patterns were being produced from the same region. Due to the coordinates from which the anomaly seems to be originating, many believe that the waves could, to a certain extent, be linked to the Princess Elizabeth Station. The station is situated at the base of figures that resemble pyramids. You might have heard a while back about a report, although controversial, that former astronaut Buzz Aldrin, who had recently visited Antarctica, had tweeted a photo of a pyramid, explaining in his own words that evil is here. So what did he mean by his Twitter statement? His words were removed shortly after they were posted. It appears that yet another mystery seems to be originating from the South Pole that has yet to be explained. Take a look at this screencast from May 25th. If you look to the left of South America on this map, you will notice that the waves appear to be emanating from Antarctica and moving out into the Pacific Ocean. If you follow the pattern of strange anomalies here, then it certainly looks like something is happening that none of us can fully explain. But as I have indicated many times, the truth is out there. We just have to search for it, and one day, very soon, hopefully, we will find it. One more thing I want to mention, because it has gotten a lot of attention over on our Facebook page. We recently received an image from one of our sky watchers who had this photo from February 26th, and he wanted to finally share it with our followers. It's a fairly remarkable capture of a planetary body that was briefly seen in the southeastern sky on that particular night. Now, as you may be aware, on that date, both Venus and Mars were located in the west-northwestern sky well above the horizon. Both were very visible, especially Venus, which was resembling the Star of Bethlehem with its extreme luminosity. Many of you commented how peculiar and strange Venus was looking before it transitioned to becoming the morning star sometime in March. There are a lot of viewers second-guessing about this photo, but it seems that no one can fully explain what this is. So I thought I would just get this out to you. You can go over to our Facebook page and follow the comments on this, as it really has garnered a lot of attention, as do all mysteries that are difficult to explain. So my friends, keep yourself informed on everything that is going on these days. Don't just rely on what the mainstream media or others may tell you. Investigate for yourself. That is the surest way to get the information that you will need going forward. In the meantime, stay safe, be aware of your surroundings, and keep looking to the SpaceX Observer described their difficulty in convincing friends and family that something is appearing in the sky that is on a trajectory that will bring it very close to the Earth. Their concern was primarily centered around the belief that as time passes and nothing happens, that the claims of an apocalyptic event will fall by the wayside, as such claims, at least on the surface, will prove to be outlandish and unrealistic by the people that this individual is earnestly trying to convince. In an effort to provide a bit of assistance to this individual, I began listing reasons why this planet or system of planets exists, and I've come up with a series of verifiable and realistic reasons for its existence that you, as an observer of the sky, can share with your neighbors and family. Regardless of the extent of their knowledge or their lack thereof, this can be a resourceful list that can be presented without being labeled as a crackpot. After publishing more than 70 videos on this subject, I thought that maybe it would be appropriate to provide my reasons why Nibiru, Planet X, is real, and how NASA has become an unwilling accomplice in verifying its existence. I'll start with the first one that comes to mind, and probably the most compelling argument for the existence of Planet X. You have heard me talk about this before, but for the sake of those who may be novice or inexperienced regarding this subject, let's be mindful of what has already been proven to be true. NASA announced to the world in 1983 that Planet X was on the fringes of our solar system. They said it was virtually knocking at our door. The story was covered on the front page of the Washington Post and the New York Times, two of the most prestigious newspapers in the world. Soon afterwards, then-President Ronald Reagan made the declaration part of the United States national security mandate, which in political terms means he made it illegal for astronomers, scientists, government agencies, and institutions of learning from speaking publicly about this discovery. He forced this mandate because he was convinced that the public would panic if they understood that a large planetary body was entering our solar system that had the potential to cause global cataclysms on an epic scale. He convinced other nations to follow suit, and it then became top secret information, where only bits and pieces were allowed to leak out to the public. There are many stories from ancient civilizations the world over that describe a large planetary body that returns to our solar system periodically, causing destruction in the form of superfloods, earthquakes, and volcanic activity. If you take the writings of the Sumerian world, considered the cradle of civilization, and compared them to the stories spoken by the Aborigines of Australia and the teachings of Holy Scripture with respect to wormwood, you will discover that each of these stories has a similarity that cannot be considered a coincidence. And here's why. The Sumerians were the people of Babylonia who actually named this planet Nibiru, or Planet of the Crossing, and did this in their own language. One of the reasons why this is so convincing is that the Sumerians actually discovered Pluto and included it in their model of our solar system, which is in direct contradiction to the fact that our own astronomers didn't announce the discovery of Pluto until 1930. The other reason this is so convincing is that many of these civilizations have no correlation with one another, and their writings were from different time periods. And so common sense would tell you that their stories originated independently from one another. If you doubt this, then I would recommend that you read Zacharias Sitchin's books on Earth Chronicles. Now, for someone who has been labeled as a fraud or imposter by those who know absolutely nothing about this man's character, his books have sold tens of millions of copies worldwide and have been translated into more than 25 languages. This is quite an accomplishment for someone who some folks believe is a crackpot. If you have done any research, you may know why public and private astronomers alike are searching the sky for the elusive planet. In 1894, Percival Lowell, a wealthy American businessman, financed the building of the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona. Part of the Lowell Observatory's original mandate was to specifically look for the mysterious planet, thus establishing profound proof that America knew of its existence over 100 years ago. They searched the skies for over 30 years and thought they had found it in 1930, but it turned out to be what we call Pluto, and determined it wasn't large enough to be Planet X. This compelling piece of evidence is not widely known or talked about, but shows that certain groups within American society knew of this planet's existence and its potential for devastation. Although rarely talked about, the phenomenon of an increase in the Earth's wobble observed by the public worldwide is included in the top 5 reasons for its numbers of observations made by the public. Here's an important observation that has been reported by farmers around the world who are consistently viewing the sky as part of their livelihood as the world's food producers. Since the year 2005, they have been noticing how the sun and the moon have been rising and setting in abnormal positions. Now, there can be no mistake about this, since their observations have been corroborated by the Inuit elders, the Eskimo civilization of the Arctic frontier. This is what they told the world just a few short years ago about the Earth wobble and the changes to our sky.
Yung laking karotunga kaya udyat lakta sila kadoy na balok si mga mga tanali udyat kasi malaki takasyakin taban tayo mga taban yung utaw gama tana udyat kasi malaki takasyakin tabang anak kasugo kami suka gami karuan lang kami pawalo katrap tinido kisiyani Eba kaya doktor sebelum mengatakan namun eba ubaruni pau tepau ubar sebelum mengalami tepau pakai sebelum mengatakan namun isu mengatakan aku eba terkata ada ukau sekali berlagi kata sekali sila
nunak jawab kijak luk padangan Kasi naligala siya kang lalo ng mga kakao nga siya yung itakakisya ni kawin si pa niya nga siya kinat kapag nga nanubulik mga nga siya may nipikatalak si mga kalawangat nunak yawatan na kasi naligala siya malaksilyo ko mga nga nauyamit siya ng nga tak kasi mo na sa kanya.
Sa kanya tayo ako si Tito ang ito. Suka ma nung nakikita pa naman sa kanya paunak pa din ng ano aking anak sa mga ako si bad kato. Marito ko ang niyo manang minato sa kuya wala ko ma. Udo ka niya nga. Tamak ko ati yung natangin ikong nga dun imon na wala sa mga karwa. Kaya man na yun nila. Amma ang kawala ko sa mga minata abang marala sa mga kuta tamak ko ugdo yan ang makanoy diwan sa madagat kasi sila kanoy diwan ila nuna kanoy diwan sa
So here's what we know about the movement of Nibiru Planet X. It is an unnatural orbit. It does not reside on the galactic plane where all other normal planets reside. It enters our solar system from the galactic south. That is exactly why this system can be seen more easily from the southern hemisphere. And this is why large astronomical observatories have been built in this part of the world. There is sufficient evidence of an abnormal Earth wobble. They include unusual changes in the jet stream resulting in extreme weather-related events, an increase in tectonic stress, an increase in volcanic eruptions, and the melting of the polar ice caps, which have been thoroughly documented by leading scientists and geologists. Irrefutable photos and videos of second sun sightings the world over is another evidential link that cannot be ignored. Some will say every one of these images are indicative of lens flares, unless they can be proven without a shadow of a doubt. Yes, of course, we live in a digital age of computer graphics and technology. Some can be easily faked or misidentified as lens flares or sundogs, dust smudges, or some natural phenomenon. But many are not, and those that are not fake are usually the ones that are subsequently removed. Why would you censor them if they were in fact fakes? The censorship of Planet X information is very compelling. But if something is real and is then deleted, it can no longer be used as evidence because it will be inaccessible to the public. In the past, I have had to delete a number of profound links and videos from articles published on my media news sites because they have been removed from the internet for reasons that cannot be explained. One of the most compelling reasons for the existence of Planet X has to do with the so-called secret preparations that the world's governments have been conducting since the mid to late 1970s. I talked in length about this in my previous video, which coincidentally sparked a considerable amount of interest across social media and in the channel comments section of the video description. The preparations that are ongoing include, but are not necessarily limited to, underground sanctuaries and military installations. Stockpiling of supplies, which include food, water, seeds, weapons, ammunition, gasoline, and other pertinent necessities for survival. FEMA has constructed ready-made camps in various locations in the United States, away from coastlines. The camps are sitting there empty, but why exactly were they built? For what purpose? In China, they have constructed ghost cities within their vast interior, well away from coastal areas, populated by rural residents at the insistence of the Chinese military. The construction of camps can be interpreted as meaning one thing. They are anticipating the destruction or the elimination of large populations of their own citizens. One can determine that its purpose is to keep the impending cataclysms a secret for as long as possible. Unexplainable phenomena should be enough to convince even the most die-hard naysayer that our planet is changing exponentially. Since the beginning of the millennium, leading up to the present time, there has been a considerable increase in all of the events shown here. All of these events have one common denominator: the increase in the Earth's wobble, which can only be caused by another large magnetic influence in our solar system. But remember this one important reality. These events can be easily explained away and censored by the mainstream media and the powerful elite. The concerns of the public can be quickly quelled just by saying that these are natural events or events caused by human negligence. This then allows those in power to keep the public second-guessing, keeping them from connecting the dots and seeing the bigger picture. This is where you, as a sky watcher, should use common sense and draw your own conclusions that not all of these events can be just a coincidence. One of the most compelling reasons to show that the powers that be are frantically attempting to limit public perception of a potential global cataclysm is the misrepresentation or the underreporting of large earthquakes and volcanic eruptions on a global scale. In 2003, the United States Geological Society lowered the earthquake rating system by 1 point, thus allowing them to convince the public that large earthquakes were not on the rise. This shows the USGS duplicity in the matter, and people may have noticed that almost every major earthquake in the last 10 years is immediately downgraded by this institution. This certainly shows a pattern of deceit if you follow this with any sense of concern. Volcanic eruptions are more difficult to determine, but here is something quite striking. It is estimated that there are more than 3 million fissures, volcanoes, and magma flows that litter the ocean floors worldwide, with around 3,000 on the surface. One major volcanic eruption can pour more carbon dioxide and other poisonous gas and pollution into our atmosphere in one day than all of the man-made pollution we have released into the atmosphere in the last 100 years. Consider how this would affect the environment when multiple volcanoes are erupting worldwide at the same time, and you have a recipe for disaster that could well lead to a mass extinction level event. Here is something very interesting. Many believe the comet Elenin was so named as a warning to global elitists that Nibiru had arrived in our solar system. It's believed to be an acronym for Extinction Level Event. Nibiru is near. Doomsday prophecy and channeled end-time scenarios should not be overlooked when it comes to the existence of Planet X, since much of this information comes from Scripture, which millions of people accept as the accurate description of our history and the Word of God. When we consider that the Ten Commandments and many other stories in Scripture and other texts, such as the Kabbalah, are channeled information from a higher power or source, then how can we dismiss New Age channeling out of hand? You can't believe in one form of channeling and then dismiss another simply because it wasn't included in the Bible or came afterwards. There are books about past life regressions, channeled information, and alien messages that indicate our Earth has undergone past polar shifts. Noah and the Ark is a confirmation that gives validity to this story. Are Hollywood depictions of doomsday scenarios, such as the movie Melancholia, a mere coincidence or a form of end times prophecy? Could the millions of sightings of UFOs all over the world be a warning to humanity that alien life is here for a purpose that goes beyond mere curiosity? There is an eerie similarity in scope and description in the vast amount of research about aliens and UFOs, and the channeled information from such clairvoyants and seers, such as Nostradamus and Edgar Cayce. This reason I have saved for last: the overwhelming so-called scientific evidence that polar shifts have happened in the Earth's past. From a geological standpoint, the evidence is certainly overwhelming and has been confirmed many times over, even though it has not been widely recognized in the public perspective, even though dozens of research papers and studies show this to be true. What is suspect in their findings is the reason given for these past shifts, which has nothing to do with a rogue planet or a system of planets. Here is something I want you to know when you consider each of these findings by leading scientists. Many of them are paid and supported by government grants to publish conclusions on what the government wants you to know. Therefore, the evidence is shaped to fit the theory or the idea. The same could be said of astronomers. Many of them either work for NASA or for agencies tied to government research institutions. Because of this, they can be held to the national security mandate that was implemented by President Reagan in the early 1980s. So think about that the next time you ask why so many astronomers haven't said anything about Planet X. If your livelihood is linked to an agency that wants information kept from the public, you will lie you will falsify documents, and you will create new theories to back their agenda. I could list more reasons for the existence of Planet X, as it is all too real for me, but I want you to do some of your own research. Search the internet. Read up on book publications dating back 100 years. Or if you prefer not to read, check out the many videos and movies and documentaries on this subject. It is our best means for seeking the truth. If Planet X is an elaborate hoax designed to spread fear throughout the world, then it has to be considered as the greatest of all. I've been accused of being a fearmonger just because of what I believe in and because of my sincere desire to warn others. And that is okay. I can handle that. You see, it has to do with a more noble cause. It is a part of our spiritual orientation and development. This is the moment in our existence in which we determine whether we live to serve others or to serve ourselves. It is a matter of choice. Some of you have already seen what is coming, either through your visions and dreams of its reality, or through your diligent observations of the sky. Through your own intuition coupled with spiritual guidance, you have come to know and understand these things. Not all of us are blessed to see its existence in its physical state. And yet, because of humanity's propensity not to believe anything that they cannot see with their own eyes, then many will have a difficult time in believing what the rest of us know to be true. Even so, we shouldn't stop recognizing how all of this is affecting the earth. Many are under the false assumption that something this big or this important just couldn't be kept from the public, and that out of the goodness of their hearts, the governments would inform their citizens if this were true. But the reality is they cannot inform you, and they will never inform you. How can you possibly tell 7 billion people that something is coming that the world cannot control? The global elite will seek shelter in their underground cities, but even these places will crumble by the magnitude of what is upon us. Current research and data now suggest that we are living in a time of global flooding and devastating changes thrust upon the earth by powerful forces unknown to this generation. Understanding my reasons for the existence of a Planet X or a Nemesis system may in the long run help many of you to seek the truth as to why our planet is facing perilous times. I have come to the realization that my purpose in life, irrespective of my personal accomplishments, is and has been to be of service to others in the latter days. Here is something that I know to be true. The ancient cultures and civilizations left many clues as a warning to future generations. And this is how the powers that be knew when and where to look